Hello everyone and welcome to my channel YNR Trends. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Matt's sinister plan had been unfolding for weeks, but no one, especially not Nick or Sharon, had realized how deeply they had walked into his carefully constructed trap until the heavy reinforced door of the so-called death vault slammed shut behind them with a chilling metallic finality that echoed through their bones, sealing them in darkness thicker than fear itself, a darkness that smelled of damp stone and old secrets, a darkness that seemed to breathe as if alive, pressing closer with every second as Nick pounded on the door and shouted Matt's name while Sharon clung to his arm, trembling, her voice cracking as she cried out for help, for someone, anyone, to hear them, not yet realizing that no one would. Not Noah, not Faith, not Mariah, not Ray's old colleagues at the station. No one even knew where they were because Matt had planned this disappearance with frightening precision, leaving misleading evidence, staged phone activity, and perfectly timed alibis spread across Genoa City like a web of digital ghosts meant to confuse anyone who dared try to track their steps. And as the reality settled in, that they were alone, trapped, and entirely at Matt's mercy, Sharon's breath grew shaky as she whispered, "Nick, what if Noah's already in danger too?" Because Noah's sudden silence, his phone going straight to voicemail, and the strange, incomplete text message he had attempted to send earlier, "Mom, something's wrong with," had already haunted her all morning long. Before Matt lured her and Nick to this abandoned warehouse under the guise of needing to clear the air about recent conflicts. But now that incomplete message pulsed through her mind like a flashing red warning siren, and Nick could see her unraveling as he pulled her close and tried to steady her voice, even though inside him the same terror stormed violently. Because if Matt had gone after them, there was no reason he wouldn't go after Noah too. After all, Noah had been the first one suspicious of Matt, the first to speak openly about inconsistencies in Matt's stories, the first to sense that his mother and father were being manipulated into conflict designed to break them emotionally, to weaken them so Matt could move in like a vulture with perfect timing. But how could anyone have known that Matt's obsession with Sharon ran so deep, so twisted, that he believed the only path to the life he wanted was to remove Nick entirely? Not through murder, at least not immediately, but through fear, psychological torment, and separation, forcing Sharon to rely on him for comfort, security, and eventually dependence. A deranged fantasy he had nurtured silently for months. And now as Nick kicked at the steel door, ignoring the pain shooting up his leg, Sharon wiped away tears with shaking hands, staring around the vault, dimly lit by a single flickering emergency bulb that cast eerie shadows over rusted pipes, locked cabinets, and a wall covered in strange notations, scratched into the cement like tally marks counting down to something terrible, and she felt her stomach twist as her eyes landed on a small object lying in the dust near the far corner, something she recognized instantly. Noah's silver bracelet, the one he wore every day, the one he swore he would never take off, the bracelet bearing the tiny inscription "Family Always." A bracelet Sharon herself had bought for him last Christmas, and the sight of it lying abandoned sent a scream ripping from her chest as she collapsed to her knees, clutching it as if it were the last remaining piece of her son, while Nick rushed to her, his voice cracking as he whispered, "Sharon, this means Noah was here, he was here." And though the words were meant to be grounding, they only deepened the horror, because if Noah had been inside this vault, where was he now? Had Matt moved him? Hurt him? Used him as bait? Or Nick could barely allow the thought to form. Was Noah still somewhere inside this labyrinth of underground rooms, hidden, unconscious, or worse? Sharon's panic surged as she choked out, "Nick, we have to find him, we can't just sit here, we can't let Matt do this." But before Nick could answer, the old crackling speaker mounted high in the wall hissed to life, and Matt's voice, calm, chilling, eerily satisfied, filled the room as he said, "I told you both that one day you'd understand what you've done to me, and now you finally will." And Nick shouted back furiously, demanding answers, demanding to know where Noah was, threatening consequences that grew more desperate by the second. But Matt only chuckled, a sound that echoed through the vault like something from a nightmare, and said, "Noah? He's exactly where he needs to be. And soon you'll join him." Before the speaker clicked off, plunging them back into a silence so dense it felt suffocating, Sharon sobbed harder now, clutching the bracelet, rocking back and forth as Nick held her tightly, whispering that they would get out, they would save Noah, they would survive this twisted ordeal. But even as he spoke the words, Nick's mind raced, calculating, scanning the vault for weaknesses, potential escape routes, tools, anything they could use to break free before Matt escalated his madness. He inspected every inch of the walls, feeling for loose panels, weak points in the concrete, hinges on the door, old vents that might lead somewhere. But the room was engineered for confinement. Matt hadn't chosen it by accident, and the longer they remained trapped, the stronger the claustrophobic dread became, curling around them like an invisible serpent tightening its grip. Sharon forced herself to stand, brushing dust from her knees as she followed Nick's movements with determined but frightened eyes, whispering, "Nick, what if this is all my fault? What if Noah got dragged into this because Matt wanted me?" But Nick immediately grabbed her shoulders and said fiercely, "No, this is on Matt. Not you. Not Noah. We're getting out of here, Sharon, I swear to you." And she nodded, though tears still spilled down her cheeks, her mind drifting to memories of Noah as a child. His laughter, his drawings, his gentle sweetness, each memory stabbing her heart with sharper fear because if Matt had hurt Noah, if anything had happened to her son, she didn't know how she would survive the grief. Time passed with agonizing slowness, minutes stretching into hours, each flicker of the emergency bulb making the shadows seemed to shift, and eventually Nick discovered a small panel near the floor partially hidden behind old utility crates. He pried it open with brute force and revealed a crawlspace vent just barely large enough for one person to squeeze through. Its interior dark, dusty and cobwebbed, but it was a chance. A slim, terrifying, uncertain chance. And before Nick could even volunteer, Sharon insisted, "I'm smaller, I can fit, let me go." And though Nick initially refused, fearing for her safety, the desperation in Sharon's eyes was undeniable as she clutched Noah's bracelet and whispered, "If my son is somewhere in these tunnels, he needs me, please, Nick, please." And he finally relented, helping her into the vent, watching her disappear slowly into the darkness, her voice echoing faintly as she called back, "I'll find him, Nick, we'll both come back for you, I promise." But as soon as she crawled several feet inside, she felt something cold brush her hand, something metallic, and then she saw it. A trail of small objects scattered along the vent floor, objects instantly recognizable as Noah's belongings. A jacket zipper pull, a crushed headphone, a torn scrap of his sketchbook, almost as though he had left them deliberately as a path, a silent plea guiding her through the underground maze. Sharon followed the trail breathlessly, crawling for what felt like an eternity until the vent opened into a larger chamber lit only by the faint glow of emergency backup lights. And there, across the room, she saw a shadow slumped against the wall, unmoving, and her heart stopped as she whispered, "Noah?" Her voice trembling as she stumbled toward the figure, her legs shaking, tears blurring her vision. Sharon's breath hitched in her throat as she stumbled forward, her fingers trembling violently as the dim, flickering emergency lights finally sharpened just enough to reveal the collapsed figure in the far corner. And she whispered Noah's name again, this time louder, rawer, soaked in panic, as she dropped to her knees beside him, her heart thundering so violently she could barely breathe, terrified of what she might find. Her shaking hands hovered just an inch from his shoulder before she finally gathered the courage to touch him, whispering, "Noah, sweetheart, please wake up, please." And when her fingers brushed his jacket, still warm, thank God, still warm, her body sagged with momentary relief, but that relief vanished instantly when she saw the bruising along his temple, the smear of dried blood near his hairline, and the strange rope-like marks on his wrists as though he had been dragged or restrained at some point. Sharon's voice cracked as she gently shook him again, begging, pleading, tears cascading down her cheeks, and at last Noah let out a faint groan, a weak, pained sound that made Sharon nearly collapse with relief, as his eyelids fluttered, unfocused and heavy, and he whispered hoarsely, "Mom?" before wincing at the sharp pain that radiated through his head. Sharon cupped his face, kissing his forehead, sobbing, "I'm here. Oh my God, I'm here, baby, I'm here." And Noah blinked slowly, trying to shake off the fog as he whispered, He said you'd come. He wanted you to find me. Mom, he's not done. Matt's not done." And Sharon felt dread curl around her spine like a fist tightening, squeezing, threatening to steal her breath away as she held her son closer, trying to steady him while her mind raced, wondering how deep Matt's labyrinth extended beneath Genoa City and how far he would go to break them. Noah tried to push himself upright, but he winced sharply again, clutching his side, whispering, "He hit me. I don't know how long I was out. I tried to leave clues. I didn't know if anyone would find them." And Sharon tried to choke back her sobs as she whispered, "You did exactly what you needed to do, you saved us, sweetheart." But even as she said it, she could feel the room around them shifting with a quiet, oppressive heaviness, as though the walls themselves were listening, as though Matt's presence loomed unseen in every shadow. Noah's voice wavered as he said, "Mom, we have to get out before he comes back," he said. He said he wants to finish what he started. And Sharon swallowed hard, forcing her panic down as she helped Noah to his feet, supporting his weight with her shoulder as they made their way across the room toward the far side where a rusted maintenance door stood crookedly on its hinges. But just as she reached for the handle, a slow, mocking clapping sound echoed from the vents overhead, followed by Matt's cold, disembodied voice through a hidden speaker saying, "Bravo, Sharon. A mother's love is a beautiful thing to watch. And now that you've found him, the real game can begin." And the sound of Matt's voice, smooth, deliberate, dripping with the deranged satisfaction of a man who believed he was orchestrating a masterpiece, sent Sharon into a spiral of terror as she shouted into the air, "Matt, stop this. You've done enough. Leave my son alone." But Matt only chuckled, low and distorted, and replied, "Oh, Sharon, you still don't understand. This isn't about hurting you. This is about showing you who truly cares for you, who will go through anything for you, who deserves you." And Sharon's stomach twisted with disgust as she realized Matt's delusion wasn't just about revenge, it was obsession, fixation, a fantasy in which he believed Sharon belonged to him and Nick, Noah. Anyone else who stood in his way were obstacles to be removed. Noah tightened his grip on her arm, whispering, "Mom, don't listen to him. We have to move. Now." And Sharon nodded quickly, pushing open the maintenance door to reveal a narrow hallway illuminated by a weak, pulsing red light that made the entire corridor look like something out of a nightmare, pipes dripping condensation, shadows stretching endlessly. Sharon supported Noah as they hurried through the passage, the sound of their footsteps echoing loudly in the confined space as though announcing their position to Matt, who seemed to listen from everywhere at once. Noah glanced over his shoulder nervously, whispering, "He was down here earlier. I heard him talking to someone. Or something. I'm not sure." And Sharon felt a chill slide down her spine as she whispered, "Someone? Who?" But Noah shook his head, still dazed, still struggling to piece everything together, whispering, "I don't know. I thought maybe he was on the phone. Or talking to himself. It didn't make sense." And Sharon knew instantly that with Matt's fractured state of mind, anything was possible. He could have been coordinating with an accomplice, or maybe he had fallen so far into delusion that he believed he was communicating with imaginary allies. They continued deeper into the corridor until they reached a junction where the hallway split into 3 paths, each equally dark and foreboding, and Sharon's heart raced. As she tried to figure out which direction would lead back to Nick, she whispered urgently, "Noah, did he say anything? Anything that could tell us where he took your father?" And Noah pressed his fingers to his temple, wincing again as he whispered, He kept saying something about the final room, the place where he would finish the equation." I didn't know what he meant, and Sharon felt her breath hitch as she scanned the metal signs on the walls, maintenance chamber, a storage wing, control center, and something about control center triggered instinctual recognition, making her whisper, "If there's any room he'd call a final room, it's the one where he can watch everything." And Noah nodded weakly as they hurried toward it, each step heavier, each breath sharper, the walls seeming to close in as the tension wrapped around them. Like a vice, when they finally reached the control center door, reinforced steel partially ajar, Sharon pushed it open cautiously, revealing a cavernous room filled with flickering monitors, each displaying camera feeds from different tunnels, different chambers, and then her blood froze, as one screen showed Nick still trapped inside the death vault, pacing, shouting, pounding the door. His desperation so palpable it cut into her like a blade. Sharon cried out, "Nick!" instinctively, even though she knew he couldn't hear her, and she rushed toward the monitors, scanning the controls with frantic eyes, searching for anything she could use to open the vault, while Noah leaned heavily against the console, breathing hard but alert enough to start flipping through switch labels, whispering, "Mom, there has to be a manual override somewhere." But before he could finish, the door behind them slammed shut with a deafening bang, causing both of them to whirl around in terror as Matt stepped into view, blocking the exit, his expression calm yet disturbingly triumphant, his eyes glinting with cold satisfaction as he said, "I knew you'd come here. I left the clues for you, Sharon. I wanted this moment. I wanted you to see what he is, what Nick truly does when you're not looking, panicking, failing, unable to protect you." And Sharon stepped in front of Noah instinctively, shielding him as she spat. "Nick has done nothing but protect me and our family. You're the one who's failed, Matt. Let us go before this goes any further." But Matt shook his head slowly, almost pityingly, as he whispered, It's already gone further, and it will go all the way unless you finally listen. And he pressed a button on a remote in his hand, causing the monitor showing Nick to zoom in, and suddenly they saw something horrifying. The vault's oxygen level indicator beginning to drop slowly but steadily like a countdown. Sharon screamed. "And no, stop. You're going to kill him." But Matt simply smiled with chilling calmness and said, "Only if you make me." "Sharon, I'll open the vault. I'll let him live. I'll even let Noah live. But I need you to make a choice, walk away from Nick and come with me." And Sharon's entire body froze as the full weight of Matt's ultimatum crashed over her. Her breath stolen from her lungs, her mind electrified with the impossible decision he was demanding. Noah gasped, horrified, whispering, "Mom, don't, he's lying, he'll kill us anyway." And Sharon's pulse thundered as she glared at Matt, her voice trembling with rage as she said, "You think I would ever choose you? After what you've done? After what you've put my family through?" But Matt's smile darkened, twisted, his eyes cold as ice as he replied, "Then Nick dies first." And he began to raise the remote again. Sharon's scream ripped through the control room as Matt lifted the remote higher, his thumb hovering over the button like a guillotine blade preparing to fall, and she lunged forward without thinking, pure instinct driving her as she shouted, "Stop!" her voice echoing so loudly off the metal walls that it even startled Noah, who clutched the console for support. Matt froze momentarily, amused by her desperation, tilting his head in that eerie, detached way that made Sharon's skin crawl as he said, "You see? You can make the right choice if you're properly motivated." But Sharon took a shaky breath, forcing herself to steady her trembling hands as she stepped slowly toward him, keeping her eyes locked on the remote while her mind raced with frantic calculations. Anything, any angle, any second she could win to save Nick before Matt triggered the air depletion completely. Noah, watching from behind, understood instantly what she was doing and subtly shifted his weight, inching toward the edge of the console where an old fire extinguisher was mounted, his movements painful and slow but determined, and Sharon saw this from the corner of her vision and subtly nodded, urging him to be ready. She took another careful step forward, her voice softer now, trembling with effort as she said, "Matt, look at me. You want my attention? You want me to understand you? Then you need to listen right now. Pressing that button won't bring you anything you want. If Nick dies, you lose any chance you had of me hearing you. I won't negotiate with a murderer." And Matt's expression flickered, just for a moment, between irritation and fascination as he lowered the remote a fraction, responding coolly, "You already are negotiating, Sharon. You think you're in control? You think your words matter? They don't. Only your choices do." And Sharon took another step, swallowing fear so bitter it burned, whispering, "Then choose my way. Let him go. Let Noah go. We walk out of here, and I will listen to anything you want to say. But right now the only thing you're proving is that you're terrified. Terrified that without violence, without threats, you have nothing to offer." Matt stiffened at that, his jaw tightening, his pride stung in the way broken men with fragile egos hated most, and he snapped, "I am not terrified," stepping forward angrily. And that was the moment, the exact opening Noah had prayed for, because as Matt shifted his weight and focused on Sharon, Noah wrenched the fire extinguisher free from its mount with a painful gasp and hurled it with every ounce of strength he had left, the heavy metal cylinder flying across the room and striking Matt square in the shoulder. Matt stumbled forward in surprise, dropping the remote, which clattered across the floor, sliding beneath the control table. Sharon didn't hesitate. She launched herself at Matt, shoving him backward with a strength born from survival and maternal fury, and he crashed into the console, sending sparks flickering from several exposed wires. Noah, panting, crying from pain and fear, pushed himself upright and staggered toward the fallen remote, shouting, "Mom! I've got it!" But Matt recovered quickly, his face twisted with rage as he lunged toward Sharon, grabbing her wrist, snarling, "You ruined everything, you don't understand what you're doing!" And Sharon fought back fiercely, kicking, clawing, using every ounce of adrenaline-fueled energy as she screamed, "I understand you're never hurting my family again." Noah dove under the console, grabbed the remote, and scrambled back to his feet just as Matt shoved Sharon to the ground and turned toward him, but Noah raised the remote defensively and shouted, "Don't move!" his hand shaking but his eyes blazing with fierce determination. Matt smirked cruelly, whispering, "You won't use it," and took a step forward until Sharon, rising behind him, grabbed his jacket and yanked him backward, giving Noah the precious second he needed to press the emergency override button on the remote. The monitors flickered violently, Alarms blared through the underground corridors, red lights flashed, and the death vault door on screen suddenly unlocked, its bolts retracting with a thunderous metallic groan as Nick stumbled into view, coughing, confused, alive.